Yes, people, welcome back to the fourth episode of the Backpacking Psychonaut. I'm going to record this on video as well as audio. So if you're on Spotify and you're interested in seeing me in video for whatever reason, go over and check my YouTube channel out. But in this video, I'm going to talk about fear and how fear is instilled into everything you do and how it's at the root of all your problems. And then I want to kind of go into the techniques and the developments that you can use to kind of overcome this fear and start living a life of fulfillment and purpose and start doing the things you actually want to do instead of giving into fear and giving into your emotions and your feelings. So I suffered with fear for so long. And for me, mostly it was a fear of judgment due to never being like mega confident with the person I was, with how I looked, with like how I came across to people. I always had this fear of like what were other people thinking of me, and this formed in social anxiety. And this fear was rooted from that the fear of me not being good enough, or the fear of me never fulfilling my potential. And I was just always scared to actually be myself, and this fear run my life. It stopped me from like posting YouTube content earlier. It stopped me from going out to the gym because I was scared what other people might think to me. It stopped me from going and approaching girls because I never thought I was good enough, and I was like fearful of that they might think I'm weird. What happens if I can't talk properly? What happens if I start stuttering? And so this fear of judgment held me back massively, and it followed me through the whole of school, my whole of my early 20s, and it still follows me to this day now. And it's something I'm actively working through utilizing some of the techniques that I'm going to be kind of talking about in this podcast or in this video. So first we need to realize like, why do we have fear and where does it come from? And fear has been like instilled in us through like a mechanism of evolution. Like we've evolved fear to help us survive, because when we was going through natural selection, through evolution, like thousands of years ago, millions of years ago, we needed fear as an indicator to help us survive, because we lived in such an environment that was quite frankly really dangerous. Like there was all around us, there was things that could kill us, and like human beings aren't the strongest creatures on their own, and we're quite vulnerable really, like from a physical standpoint, and our environment was all physical back then. So we needed this fear to help us rather fight or flight, to rather get ready to fight things or get ready to run away from things. And that's why we've evolved fear, is to keep us away from danger. But what happens now is your ego, this sense of self you have, gets wrapped up and starts seeing things through that lens of fear that aren't actually that fearful and aren't dangerous to us. So for example, like social situations, you might have like the fear of going speaking to a woman, for example. You might have the fear of going speaking to a group of friends that you want to go and introduce yourself to, and this is because you've got the fear of judgment. You're scared of what other people might think of you. And this ego, this is you believing that it's not seeing reality. It's you believing that you're not good enough, that you've got all these insecurities and people don't like you, and all this is like your ego. It's all not actually you. It's this sense of self that you've created to reinforce that you're not good enough and to keep you safe and to keep you comfortable. But if you look at that scenario from like a way separate from the ego, you can look at that and think, I'm going to approach that group of friends, and even if they don't like me, even if I don't strike it off of them, nothing bad's going to happen. I'm still going to survive. I'm still going to move on. And there is nothing to be scared of. But your ego kind of wraps these excuses and wraps these kind of rationalizations around that situation and that scenario, and prevents you from taking action. And it's a massive problem. But like this ego does it in so many different ways, and I don't think people understand to what extent like fear is at the root of all their problems and instills that ego. So like procrastination, for example, right? So say if you sit down and to do some work, you might have the fear like on a base level, on a subconscious level, that you're not good enough, and the work you're going to do is going to be looked at others like badly, or it's not going to be to the standard you do it. So that's a fear of you not being good enough. So what happens then is you've got this base fear, and then your mind starts to cultivate ideas and beliefs and thoughts to like suppress you from doing that action. So it kind of gives you excuses, and you might be like, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And that doing it tomorrow, that like thought that, all right, I'll start tomorrow, I'll go to the gym tomorrow, I'll do this, is all based in fear. Another one is the gym, for example. A lot of people put off the gym and go, I'll start next week, I'll start next week. So why are you not starting now? Like you need to ask yourself this question and self-reflect and realize that what is the reason why you're not starting? And if you break it down, it's because you're scared of, you don't know what exercises to do because people might think you're weird if you go in the gym. You're scared that you're a little bit overweight and you don't want to see people in the gym. You're scared of this, you're scared of that. And it all comes down to the base of fear. And then this fear kind of hides itself and like seeps into like the nooks and crannies of your brain and prevents you from taking action. So you need to realize that this fear is just an illusion. It's kind of your ego perceiving things that aren't actually true and aren't actually there. And it's crazy. If you give into this ego and if you give into this fear, you live a life of inaction. You never go out and achieve the things you want. And it's crazy. As soon as you push yourself out there and push yourself out your comfort zone, you start to realize that like the fear that's holding you back is just a pure illusion. Like you do things and you realize that it's never that bad. Or like the worst case scenario, right? That might happen. But once it happens and you're still alive and you're still breathing and you're still who you are, you realize that it was never that bad and you should have just took the action in the first place. And this is when like, the next point of view comes through from like, you need to realize what your fears are. And because this ego is so tricky and because it like wraps this fear in like excuses and procrastination and all these different kind of like excuses you come up with, you need to sit down and realize what is it actually that you're scared of? What is that fear the root of? What is that fear coming from and what's causing it? And to do this, you need a lot of self-reflection and being honest with yourself. And you need to be open-minded to the fact that you are not the person who you think you are. And there is a lot of stuff going on in your subconscious that you're naturally scared of that you need to deal with. And a way I do this is I like to journal. So I'll just sit there and I'll go through my daily life and then I'll note when anxiety comes up, because anxiety is at the base of fear, the fear of whatever it may be, like social situations, for example. It's the fear of judgment. So I'll go through my day, right, and I'll kind of note when I get anxious. And then when I get home, I'll journal. Why did I get anxious in that situation? What was it that made me anxious? Was it the fact that I seen a pretty girl I liked? Was it the fact that I seen a mate from school? Whatever it may be, right? Whatever that excuse is, or whatever that situation that causes you to be anxious, just note it down and then go home and journal. And then once you've done that, once you started journaling, and once you, well, I can't talk, mate. It's hard doing these podcasts one take because I'm trying to flow and you start like stuttering in that. But what you want to do is once you get home, right, is you want to sit there and journal, start asking yourself why you got anxious in that situation. So write down and journal the situation. So I went into the gym and seen an old friend from school, and then I started getting anxiety. Then ask yourself why you got anxiety. Why did you feel anxious at that time? And then you'll come up with an answer. And then you want to question that answer. You want to ask why to that answer again. And you want to keep asking yourself why. And what you'll eventually do is you'll get to a point where you get to a never changing answer. Like you'll keep asking yourself why, and it'll be the same thing. And that will be a belief in your subconscious about yourself. And it might be because like this. So it might be, for example, let's say you see a pretty girl in the gym and you got anxious. So I'll go home. Why did I get anxious in that situation? Because... And then it might be an answer like, because I might have thought she thought I was weird. And then ask yourself, why would she think that you were weird? And then you'll come up with another answer and ask yourself why, and keep getting to these answers. And you might get to an answer eventually that is like, I'm not good enough. And that is a deep rooted belief you've got in your subconscious that is stemming all this fear. And once you've done that, you realize what that fear is. And you need to start doing things to disprove that fear, to disprove that belief. And this is like the basics of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. It's just about identifying your fears and then exposing yourself to situations that overcome them fears. And the more you do this, the more you realize and identify what your beliefs about yourself are and where these fears are coming from, the more you can start identifying them and attacking them and then exposing yourself to more and more situations. And this self-reflection is really important. It's so important to identify what is making you fearful and what steps you can take towards overcoming that and where them fears are coming from. And the more you do this, the more self-reflection you do, the more you start to understand yourself and the way you work, and the more you can start disproving these faulty beliefs that have been implemented in your mind through years and years. And your habits have been instilled by all these beliefs as well. It's crazy how your whole life is run by some subconscious beliefs you've got. And the more you start to realize this, the more you can start to deep root them and then replace them with new beliefs that are positive and productive to yourself. And so this comes into the next bit about like taking action and actually exposing yourself to these scenarios that make you anxious, because the more and more you put yourself in these situations that make you anxious, the better you get at becoming confident in them. The more you start realizing that, oh, look, I thought this was bad, but in reality, it's not actually that bad. And you start building confidence in that way. And confidence is just having competence in your ability to act in that situation. So let's go, for example, another social situation, or let's say for a job, say you want to apply for a job, but you're really like insecure that you're not intelligent enough or you're not good enough. But if you apply for that job and you get it and you start working in that job, you start building up confidence, you start building up skills which develop your confidence, and that anxiety and that fear goes, and you start building a new sense of like gratitude towards yourself and a sense of like competence and confidence. Same in social situations. The more and more you approach people, the more and more you talk to people, the better you get at kind of working out like, how do I socialize? And the more confident you become because you've been in that situation more and more times. And there's a quote by a psychologist called Joseph Campbell, and this is like the most mind-blowing quote. It's so simple but so effective, and it is, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." And what I get from that is, so I'm going to repeat that one more time: the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And if you break that down right, all it's saying is, whatever makes you anxious, that thing that gives you that sense of insecurity, the thing that makes you afraid, you need to head towards that, because in that anxiety, in that cloud of insecurity, is the thing you want to achieve. It's the confidence you want. And you can't get to that confidence, you can't get to that achievement without going through the cave that you're fearful to enter. And that could be going cold approaching 15 different women on the street, going out to a bar and trying to meet people and make new friends, going out and posting that first YouTube video and posting it on Instagram. For me, for example, I do not like, at first, I didn't like posting me talking to a camera on Instagram because I thought, oh, people are going to think I'm weird. Why do people think I'm this like preachy motherfucker who's on self-improvement? Why do people think I'm righteous, pretentious? You have all these thoughts and they're all stemmed in a belief that is the fear of judgment. But as soon as I posted it out there, as soon as I post the first video, and then I'm getting feedback from people, I'm getting advice from others, and I'm like, do you know what? People just want to see you be yourself. People don't give a fuck about what you're doing at all. And we seem to have this notion that others care about us so much, but everyone's so concerned about their self. Everyone's so self-reflective all the time and self-conscious that they don't have time to think about you. So just do whatever the fuck you want. Go towards that fear and tackle them goals. And the more you do this, the more you start realizing that in that fear is a fruitful existence. And the more you get pushed past that fear, the more confidence you start to build and the better you start to become as a person. And it's so important just to identify that fear and head towards it and go and tackle it. So the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And I want you to live by that, constantly reinforce that notion that whatever makes me anxious, I'm going to use that as an indicator. Use fear and use anxiety as an indicator that you should go towards that thing. And that is such a good way to live your life. And for people, like, one of the best bits of advice I ever heard was, for people that are looking for a passion or are looking for purpose in their life, look inward instead of looking for something external to do, something to a purpose that helps others or does something. Look internal, look at your insecurities and your anxieties and realize, what can I do out of these insecurities and anxieties? How can I tackle them and how can I approach them? How can I deal with them and overcome them? So use your own insecurities as your purpose, overcome them. And the more you start doing this, the more you can help others and the more the external world will kind of play towards what you want, because confidence is everything. You need confidence in absolutely everything. It is the cornerstone of life, and fear is going to hold you back so much. So the more you start looking inwards and realizing and using fear as an indicator and realizing that the more you take action, the more things start fulfilling and coming your way, the better your life will be. And I'm just going to go into a few reasons and like a few things of how you can kind of tackle fear in a productive way and not kind of ruin your self-esteem. Because if you've got these fears of social situations, for example, and you go straight into trying to make friends on the street or approaching people or like going to a party and you're really socially anxious, or if you're going to like try and tackle your fears head on in its most predominant form, then you're going to ruin your self-esteem. So you need to slowly build your way up. That is the best way to do it. Incremental gains and slowly start building your confidence is going to be better than you pushing yourself in the deep end and failing. So what I would do is I would journal. What can you do today to overcome this fear? So this fear, right, you might have realized it through journaling, through a bit of meditation, self-reflection. It might be that I've got this fear of judgment from others. I'm scared of what other people think of me. I'm so concerned about what others think of me that it's ruining my life. So, and that's coming from a fear that you're not good enough. So you've got this fear of judgment from others, right? What can I start doing to get over that fear of judgment? So first, I can go and just speak to the cashier at a checkout. I can literally just go to the checkout, speak to the cashier, have a conversation. And that made me a little bit anxious, but it wasn't something well outside my comfort zone where I was just going to completely freak out. And the more you do that, the more you start pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and slowly but surely start making things more and more difficult, the more confidence you start building and the closer you get towards like reaching that end goal of being super confident. And so you need to do it in practical ways like that. You need to break your goals down. You need to break your fears down into little steps and start slowly but surely taking action. So you get to a point where you can do the thing that most scares you and it just doesn't bother you. It feels like you are ready for it and you are confident. And there's nothing more important than facing your fears. Your fears will hold you back so much and they seep into everything in your life. So take action on this now, because the longer you leave it, like I'm guessing the people that are watching this are more like the younger generation. And I just want to say to like anyone who's in their teens, 20s, maybe early 30s, that if you keep sitting there and letting fear control your life, you will just be a wasted potential. You'll get to 40, 50 and you'll be someone who's never dealt with their insecurities and never dealt with their problems. And look, you might have had a really rough childhood. You might have had some like really, really like bad experiences growing up, but it's your responsibility to deal with them. And the more you hide away from them and the more you let fear seep into everything in your life, the worse it's going to get. The older you're going to get, the worse these fears are going to get, and the more resentful you're going to get, and the further away you're going to get from your potential. And if you're 20s, 30s, we've got this whole life ahead of us to go and be whoever the fuck we want. We've got all this time to work on ourselves, dedicate ourselves to overcoming our fears and being the person we want. And the longer you leave it, the more you let fear hold you back, the older you're going to get and the more resentful you're going to get. So take action now. Don't let your older self look back at the you now with resent. Make him feel like grateful and have gratitude for the actions you took. So that's my episode on fear, people. Thank you very much for listening. And one more quote I want to say is, we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. Stop getting stuck in your heads, head towards fear, and I'll see you all the next video or podcast.